Okay, let's just jump right in. We're heading into a massive, globally popular world of speculative fiction today that is, I think it's fair to say, incredibly dense.
Oh, for sure. It's often misunderstood and, yeah, sometimes a pretty controversial corner of modern media.
Exactly. This deep dive is all about the Omegaverse, or as it's often called, ABO.
It's truly remarkable because what started as a fan fiction trope is now, it's a fully realized alternate biological reality.
All new reality.
Yeah. The core idea is that humanity is split into this three-tiered hierarchy.
Mm.
You have alphas, betas, and omegas, and that system basically gives writers this amazing sandbox to explore really intense themes.
Like power dynamics, social inequality.
Exactly. And, that central conflict of biological destiny versus your own personal choices.
Absolutely. And when you say alternate biology, you really mean it. So our mission today is to cut through that complexity. We're going to look at the unique anatomy. And yes, that includes things like male pregnancy and pheromonal control. And maybe most importantly, we want to look at how this whole creative space has exploded from these niche internet forums into polished global media. We're talking live action dramas, huge Korean webtoons.
We're here to understand the scale and honestly the sophistication of it all.
So we have to start at the beginning. It sounds like something Tolkien would dream up, but the real origin is, well, it's a lot more chaotic, more grassroots. Where did ABO even come from?
It's 100% born from collaborative fan culture. The genre as we know it, it really started to take shape around 2010.
Okay, so pretty recent.
Yeah, within the fan fiction community for the TV show Supernatural, it kind of popped up from an anonymous kink meme on LiveJournal.
Right.
And at first it was just a tool, a way to explore existing tropes like impreg or these intense power imbalances without having to invent a whole new kind of demon or monster every time. It was a shortcut.
That's such a perfect snapshot of fan culture, isn't it? It wasn't built from nothing. It was like a fusion, a perfect storm of these really powerful ideas that were already floating around.
Exactly. You had Emperor Preg, male pregnancy, which was already a huge staple in queer fan fiction for years. Then writers started pulling in this high-stakes biological clock idea.
Like a forced mating cycle.
Precisely. A lot of that was inspired by the Vulcan pond far from Star Trek. That gave it this unavoidable, intense drama.
And the names themselves. Alpha, beta, omega. Where did that layer come from?
That was the final piece of the puzzle. The naming convention was lifted straight from this mid-20th century research on captive wolf packs, which had this idea of a really rigid hierarchy.
Oh, that's fascinating.
And what's kind of ironic is that the scientist who came up with the alpha wolf idea, he later completely debunked his own work. He admitted wild wolves just don't act that way.
No way.
Yeah, but by then it was too late. The alpha beta omega structure was already locked in, adopted by fans, and just ready to explode.
And it really did explode. It just shows the power of a simple, effective structure, even if the science behind it was, shaky.
Totally. By 2014, it had made its way into Japanese yaoi manga, and today, we're talking over 165,000 fan works just on one site, Archive of Our Own. It's a huge self-sustaining world.
Wow. But no matter how complex the stories get, it all comes back to those three tiers, right?
Always. That's the foundation.
Okay, so let's just quickly refresh those. Yeah, the alphas, male or female, they're dominant, leaders, sometimes aggressive, and at the top of the social ladder.
Right, and they experience what's called a rut. It's this period of intense sexual urgency, often triggered by an omega.
Then you have the betas, who are kind of the baseline humans in this world.
Yeah, they're the normies. They make up the vast majority, like 60 to 90% of the population. They don't have the intense cycles or pheromone responses. They're just the everyday people.
And finally, the omegas. They're often, though not always, at the bottom of the hierarchy, characterized as nurturing, maybe submissive. But the key biological thing, the thing that drives the plot, is the heat cycle.
Exactly, the estrus. It's a period where they become extremely fertile and release these incredibly powerful pheromones that attract alphas.
And that biological tension is the engine for everything.
It is. The plot, the conflict, the entire way society is built. It all stems from that. Which brings us to the really intricate biological details writers have been fleshing out for over a decade.
Okay, let's get into the mechanics, because this is where the world building gets so inventive. Starting with mpreg. All omegas, no matter their primary sex, have a functional uterus.
And that has huge narrative implications. For male omegas specifically, the way the reproductive system is described often means a C-section is required for birth.
So right away, you're introducing this layer of vulnerability, this dependence on a medical system.
A medical system that might be supportive or might not be, depending on the world, it builds instant conflict.
That's a brilliant detail. Now, beyond the uterus, there's a heavy canine influence in the mating mechanics. Let's talk about nodding. What is that?
Nodding is a very distinct trait where an alpha's penis swells at the base during climax. This creates a temporary physical lock, connecting the couple.
And the purpose of that is?
Biologically, it's to maximize the chance of fertilization, to ensure conception during that peak fertility of the heat cycle.
That is such an intense piece of world building. It feels designed to just ramp up the drama, doesn't it?
Yeah.
It's not just sex. It's this temporary, biologically forced bond, whether they want it or not.
It absolutely does. And to help with that intense physicality, omegas produce something called slick.
Okay.
It's a natural, very abundant lubricant they produce during heat, specifically to prevent injury from the knot. The level of mechanical detail is just incredible.
It really is. Now, beyond the physical, there's a whole social language built on scent and pheromones. You mentioned scent glands.
Yes. The primary ones are usually on the nape of the neck. That's the most vulnerable spot, and it's where the permanent marking bite happens.
We'll get to that. What are the others?
You also have glands on the wrists for more casual social scenting, like with friends, and on the inner thighs for more intimate moments. It's a whole nonverbal language.
And that marking bite is critical to the lore, right, for defining ownership.
It is. When an alpha claims an omega, they bite that scent gland on the neck during mating. It creates this deep psychological and biological bond. It's often written so they can feel each other's emotions, pain, even location.
Wow. So it's the ultimate contract.
And in darker stories, it's a contract that's often forced.
But not all the details are about conflict. There are some really tender instincts in the lore, too, right? I'm thinking about nesting.
Nesting is one of the most beloved parts of the genre. It's this compulsive behavior omegas get during heat or pregnancy. They feel this overwhelming instinct to build a safe space.
A nest.
A literal nest, yeah, out of soft things, blankets, pillows, and very often they'll use the alpha's clothing because the scent provides security and comfort. It's raw instinct mixed with emotional trust.
That's such a humanizing detail, that in this world of, ruts and knots, the main instinct is just for safety.
And on that note, there's also scent drunkenness. It's a unique state where a partner or a child, a pup, can get sort of intoxicated from a powerful pheromone.
Intoxicated how?
It leads to this state of extreme relaxation, a soft drop. It turns what is often a biological weapon into something that provides comfort.
The genius of it is how that biology creates both conflict and these moments of unexpected intimacy. But the genre hasn't just stayed the same. Modern ABO is all about subverting those rules.
Exactly. The current trends are dominated by stories that are actively critiquing the society that the biology created. And since the dynamic is so powerful, the state often gets involved with pharmaceuticals to keep order.
Right, so you have omegas taking suppressants to stop their heats, alphas on inhibitors to control their ruts.
And then scent blockers to hide their status entirely, just to avoid discrimination and try to live a normal life.
That pressure to use scent blockers feels like a very direct metaphor.
Oh, it's a powerful allegory for any real-world situation where people from marginalized groups have to hide a part of their identity just to be accepted in the workplace or in society.
Of course, on the darker side of that, you have the existence of inducers.
Right, drugs that can force a heat or a rut. Their existence immediately takes the story into really difficult territory, forcing it to deal with issues of consent head on.
It's brutal.
It is. But modern writers often use them as a device to highlight the stakes, to show how dystopian their world is, rather than treating it lightly.
And beyond just controlling the biology, writers are now breaking it. The simple alpha, beta, omega triad wasn't enough anymore.
No, people are exploring a whole spectrum now. There's a huge focus on breaking the mold. You see the rise of, say, dominant omegas.
For this.
There are omegas who are mentally or physically stronger, who can actually manipulate alphas. It completely flips the expected power dynamic. Then you have submissive alphas who challenge the stereotype that all alphas must be dominant.
And this is where we get into the really rare, almost mythical tiers, like the Enigma.
The Enigma is a game changer. Usually a legendary fourth gender, superior to alphas in every way. They can just override an alpha's dominance, sometimes even forcing the alpha into an omega-like role. It's a total reset button for the hierarchy.
And what about the Sigma?
The Sigma is more of a social archetype, usually an omega who just refuses to play the game. They're a lone wolf who won't nest, won't mate, won't submit. They are the rebels.
What's so interesting is how all of this feeds back into social commentary. The whole genre is becoming a space to deconstruct gender essentialism.
Absolutely. The main message of modern ABO is that your biology does not define your personality. The stories are all about characters overcoming what they were born as.
And that even extends to identity. We're seeing things like transdynamic identity being explored.
Yeah, where a character identifies as a different rank than the one they presented as during their second puberty.
And they get affirming care for that.
They do. Stories might include things like not removal surgery, really emphasizing that your dynamic is about who you are, not just your genetics.
And I think the ultimate rejection of biological destiny is the move away from the fated mates trope.
Oh, massively. Modern stories frequently have characters who feel that primal, fated pull, and then they reject it. They choose a partner based on love and respect, not pheromones.
It's the genre growing up, moving from determinism to free will.
For sure. And that focus on choice is what makes it so flexible as it gets adapted globally. The way it's handled in Tokyo is so different from Seoul or Bangkok.
Let's talk about that. How does it change across cultures?
Well, in Japan, the manga tends to stick pretty close to the core rules. Nodding and bonding are central. You get a lot of domestic family-building stories like Tadaima, Okairi, but also high drama.
But in South Korea, with their webtoons, the focus shifts, right?
It does. They favor this high-production digital art, and the stories are often about intense social hierarchies, psychological trauma, and crucially, they often leave out or downplay the marking bite.
Why is that?
It's a deliberate choice. By removing that permanent biological bond, they put all the emphasis on individual agency over a sense of ownership. You see that in huge hits like Love is an Illusion.
And then you have the challenge of live action in places like China and Thailand, where censorship is a huge factor.
A massive factor. Live-action dramas have to remove the explicit biology like impreg and nodding. In Thailand, a show like Pit Babe replaced the ABO system with a metaphorical power system tied to car racing.
And in China.
They use alternative coded language like Qianyuan and Kunze to keep the idea of the hierarchy without ever mentioning the explicit biology that would trigger the censors.
The fact that they go to such lengths to adapt it just shows how powerful the allegory is. So why does this resonate so deeply with people?
Because at its core, the ABO hierarchy is a very simple, very effective allegory for real-world issues. Classism, patriarchy, the oppression of marginalized groups. It's a ready-made framework for social critique.
And we touched on it earlier, but Omega's using suppressants to hide their status. That's such a perfect mirror for anyone who's had to hide a fundamental part of themselves to fit in.
It's also just incredible for exploring ethics. That constant tension between instinct versus choice, the biological pull of a heat versus a character's free will, it lets you explore consent and responsibility in this super high-stakes context.
Plus, it's just inherently subversive, right?
Right.
It queers gender roles, male Omegas get pregnant, female alphas can impregnate others.
It completely throws traditional anatomical assumptions out the window. It creates this new space to explore masculinity and femininity without the limits of cisgender biology.
So we've covered the whole ecosystem. It's massive. It supports everything from fluffy family stories to dark political dystopias.
It's an incredibly vast and intricate system of lore. And before we wrap, we have to mention one of the most powerful and frankly terrifying elements. The voice.
Yes, the alpha command.
That's the classic version, a specific vocal tone that can physically force an omega and sometimes a beta to obey.
It's chilling.
But modern lore has evolved it. Now there's also the omega command, which bypasses physical force and just hits you with this wave of crushing guilt or submission. It compels you through pure emotion.
The voice. It's basically a psychological weapon tied to your rank. It gives this immense involuntary power to someone's voice and emotions in that world.
It boils down rhetoric to a biological weapon, a fascinating concept.
Which brings us to our final thought for you, the listener. This whole fictional system gives immense involuntary power to vocal commands and emotional guilt, all tied to social rank. So, if we see this ADO hierarchy as an allegory for our own world, what real-world forms of rhetoric or emotional appeal do you think hold the most powerful involuntary sway over people today, especially when they exploit class or social status? What is our version of the voice that forces compliance, maybe without us even realizing it? Something to think about until our next deep dive.
Thanks so much for watching. If you enjoyed the video, please consider liking, commenting, and subscribing. It really helps the channel grow. See you in the next one.